I am a surgeon. I am a surgeon at the University of Bologna. Every time I'm asked to speak about my experience, the first feeling I have is to pause because I don't know how you feel about it, but it is difficult to speak in public without cheating about the things I love most. And this life is the thing I love the most. Absolutely. So I have some fear and shyness because for me, the movement was literally and is my salvation. I don't know where I would be without the movement, especially if I think back 2 years ago. It would have been absurd. I would have considered anybody mad who told me I would have been here telling you what I'm going to tell you, because it was something that entered my life little by little and changed me unexpectedly. But even before I say another thing, precisely for what I have just told you, it is very clear that I received everything I am. It was given to me. So when friends ask me for a favor, a sacrifice for the movement, I cannot back out because of the gratitude I feel for the movement. I do it gladly. When I started, I will omit the beginning. I will start immediately at the pivotal point. When I started my academic career, or my profession, which was not exactly clear yet, I had just finished medical school, and I had to find a reference point, a teacher, somewhere to begin. I was interested in surgery, but I did not have anyone from the movement in this field, or any close friends in the field to help me make a decision. So I did the most reasonable thing. I met all the surgeons who were at the university at that time, and I chose the one who, at first glance, corresponded the most to me. And I did something that in hindsight I probably would not have done or would not do. That is, I did not choose the best surgeon, but the one who, after talking with him, I felt was a man who was living what he was saying. He was a man who was what he was saying, and I was interested in someone like that. He really struck me by his attitude, which was honest, humanly honest. So I followed him. As someone at that age, I think of all of you. I was completely attached to him. I used to watch how he moved, what he did, how he used to repeat things. In the operating room, I paid attention down to the finest detail, the moves, etc., etc. I remember he had a tic. I adopted that as well. It was unbelievable. And at that time, we were not a big community. We were a small community. And I always invited him to our meetings or assemblies. Always pretty sure he would never come. But I did it anyway. So one day, he showed up at an assembly. Now you can imagine the fear and trepidation I had, because I had a respect and an awe for him, like in front of a teacher that you admire deeply. I saw him there. You can imagine. There were 30, at most 40 people, all young people, and this guy with a bald head who towered over everybody, with a Swiss face. It was one of his features that he never lost. A Swiss face means that, have you ever seen the Swiss news? They talk about good news or about a tragedy with the same face, always the same. He was the same, exactly like this. And that time, I used to, it happens to all of us, I used to say some explicit sentences. That time, with clean language, I was choosing my words, no bad words, and I was keeping an eye always on him. And I was starting to intensify my speech, and he was just Swiss. And I kept going, Swiss. At the end of the assembly, he stood up and left, with the same expression as always. I quickly gave the announcements. I stopped him as he was leaving, and in that atmosphere you can imagine, I said, Professor, how did it go? He looks at me, Swiss, and says, Piccinini, this is childish stuff. It's nice, it is true, but it is childish. It is childish. It is good for you, because you don't know what life is. I made compromises. My life was difficult. I had great struggles, even disasters. This is the passion of children. The man, the admiration crumbled, and the tick disappeared. Because I had the clear awareness that something is recognized as true when it corresponds and remains true forever. Also, because what recognizes the truth is like a, how would you say, a detector, something that we have inside us that distinguishes us. It is the need for truth, beauty, justice, of loving and being loved. And it is called the heart. This is structural, and it cannot be broken apart because a situation is difficult or things do not add up or because we are getting old. It is structural. It is what characterizes us and makes us recognize things as true that remain forever. And it's not a problem of age, and it's not a problem of circumstances. From that moment I understood there is just one problem. The unity of my person, which was being undermined by his remarks. The unity of my person was identified by that factor inside myself, which was accompanying me, like when I found my girlfriend or when I was playing soccer, when I was in college. It was something that characterized me, a need for happiness that nothing could have taken away. Somehow the heart would always come out, always. At minimum, as bitterness, but it would come out. I understood this, and then I understood that the unity of the person starts from the factor that you put your heart into what you do. And this, trust me, is true for people like me who have to deal with dramatic circumstances that I will tell you. But it's also true if you are in front of the computer, at the grocery store, or cleaning the stairs. It is the same. Putting your heart into what you do means you put yourself into it, and putting your heart in what you do means to bet on your need for gladness, which is indomitable because it is structural in us. But soon life becomes harder. I also experienced the situations he was describing. Indeed, I had to change city, change circumstances. I went to a larger surgical division. Where I was considered an intruder. Clearly and immediately, your death is my life. Therefore, each mistake was good news for the others. There was a tremendous amount of control and tension every day. And then, my family had grown. Holy cow. With one thing after another, I had 4 children. And it was a serious problem because I did not have enough money. My parents kept giving me money. It was kind of humiliating, and eventually I had told them this, so they used to give me cheese and clothes instead of money. In addition, there was also my commitment to the movement. I suddenly became the leader of one of the largest Clue communities in Italy, in Bologna. And there were a lot of issues. And here I understood that, again, the unity of my person is not a sought-after balance of activities, problems, or things to do, because it could not be this way. It wouldn't work. My time, my availability, my job, my family, it couldn't be this way. Because to put your heart into what you do does not mean to do everything. It was a totality also inside the circumstances that do not add up, or I cannot resolve. Therefore, I understood that you can put your heart into what you do if you are in front of something bigger than you. There must be something bigger than you. What we call destiny in School of Community. Bigger than your capacity, bigger than, and life, every step of life, being with family or at the assembly with a clue, or going to the hospital in the morning. Life is a path to destiny, always. Every step is this, an answer to destiny, and the commitment to destiny. But this is not enough. It does not work even like this. It does not work even like this. I would come to understand this later. Because meanwhile, my commitment at the college grew. My professional skills increased. And therefore I started to be a reference point. It was minor at that time. Therefore, particular cases were assigned to me. And I was starting to experience that things can go well or bad. It was not always a success. I still remember something that happened with the father of someone in our community. I operated on him, but he got worse. I operated again, worse, operated again. It was like this for a year, and then he died. What happened never left me in peace. Never. Then once we were at one of the first meetings for the leaders in Milan. There were still not many of us with Giussani. I was in the corridor. Giussani got closer and asked, "How's it going?" We were in the corridor. I said, "Not too bad," and he stopped. "What do you mean, not too bad? What's wrong?" "No, just silly things. After what we just said at the meeting, these are silly things. It does not matter." He suddenly stopped. He was really tired. He was in the corridor. People were passing through. "But Enzo, we talk about many silly things. But when there is something that really matters, why don't you bring it up?" I was stuck. I said, "I'm sorry, so I don't want, but this thing happened and I feel guilty. I can't sleep anymore. I sleep 1 hour, then it comes into my mind. I feel guilty. I cannot sleep anymore. And my wife is also concerned because after 1 hour, I get up. And this keeps happening." He looked at me and he gave me an answer that I was not expecting at all. He looked at me with a disappointed face and said, "Enzo, you are the one telling me this? You behave as if Christ did not exist, and as if everything depended on your hands. How can you go on like this? You will stop doing things the way you do them now. You will act like everybody else does, looking for what hurts you the least, that calms you down. But you will not do anything anymore. You will not risk anymore. By the way, I'd like to talk to you about this again. Can you come to my house?" 2 days later, I was at his place. Then we met for lunch. "Tell me again," he said. I touched on it, but then I said, "Giussani, I don't want to take up your time." Now I got it. In my hospital, there's a little chapel on the 4th floor. And now, before operating, I go there. I go there and I say a prayer, and things go on in the right direction. I am calmer. And he reacted, Enzo, is this just about praying? It's not just to pray. It's that you are not able to offer. Your problem is that you cannot offer. And to offer means that reality is not something in your hands. It's not yours. There is a question in everything we do, the question that the Lord, the owner of this reality, reveals himself. We need to live like this. And I already told you, but I will tell you again, you will stop doing what you are doing, and you will be afraid of risking. And indeed, it was true, incredibly true. For 2 months, I said to my older assistants, guys, no more of these operations. We do not need problems. I have to move up the ladder. The less problems I have, the better. And it was tremendous because, and then later in the discussion, do you know what it means to offer? To recognize that reality is not yours, that you did not make it, that you are not the owner of anything? It means that you stay in front of reality with a poverty that is the truest way, the most authentic way of staying in front of it. You are seriously realistic. You take into account everything. You realize your limit. If you don't know, you ask. And if you will ask, you will not have to defend your position. So, I told you, put your heart in what you do. If there is something bigger than you, but this something bigger than you must be present. Present. Something to whom you can say, here it is. Something you recognize, to whom you answer for what you do. To answer to something or someone for what you do is the way in which reality becomes dramatically present. Otherwise, what exists is only what you think, you feel, what's going well or bad, and you erase the things that don't go well or that you don't feel. But there is also what you don't feel, and there is also what does not go well. But that was not all. That was not all. This is the thing that ultimately is even clearer. That was not all, because later an event happened that made the final point clear. One of us, to whom I was very attached. This is an episode I will unlikely forget. She had been operated on in another hospital and she became worse. On a Sunday morning, Giussani called and told me, would you feel like taking her under your care? In that section, there were the professors in charge of my area of specialization. Therefore, it was a big problem. And even worse, I was trying for a promotion. I didn't say this to Giussani. I said, but is it necessary? If it is, I'll do it. We'll do it. I'll go. And after a while, I was asked to bring her to Bologna. I said, dang, it's a huge undertaking. Also, because all the surgeons I used to know very well had already said, listen, don't touch her, don't do it. We operated on her. She cannot be operated on. Don't do it, otherwise she'll die. Get her better. Don't do it. Take her under your care. They were glad to leave her to me. But do not touch her because she'll die. Do you understand? Get her better until you can with medical treatment and hope that she will recover by herself. Therefore, I brought her to Bologna, and I literally did that, trying in any way to understand if it was possible to get her better without doing a thing I was explicitly told was not possible. And since these people were not inexperienced at all, it was credible. But then I seriously tried to understand how long I could have waited. But all the data were telling me that it was not possible to wait. Therefore, at some point, I had to go. I had to operate. I had to do it. The data did not allow me to wait. One day, I decided to perform the operation. I called Giussani, because this is what I want to tell you. A bigger thing that is present and is still not enough. You are not able to put your heart into what you do. It does not work because after a while, reality is tough and your heart gives in, and then you begin to complain and defend yourself. You need to not be alone. You need to not be alone. So I picked up my phone and I called Father Giussani, and I was lucky enough that he answered. Sorry, Giussani, for calling you in the evening. I don't ask you to solve the technical issues or to tell me what to do, because the data told me that. But if you had not answered, I would have needed to call someone else, because I don't know if it's wrong or not, but I need some help, some support. Support, even simply support, because I'm afraid. I'm worried. He told me, you are not mistaken. You are definitely right, because all the scientific certainty cannot give you the certainty to try, as it cannot give you the certainty in life. You need the memory of a living relationship with someone with you. Otherwise, you cannot go beyond what you measure, what you are doing. Then he says, listen, the data pointed the way. In front of God, you have to go. In front of men, I don't know, but I don't care. In front of God, you have to go. It was incredible. Incredible, guys. Because it's a certainty that comes from the fact that the data you have are the circumstances. Do you understand? It's not just the matter of 4 X-rays, but the circumstances you have to respond to, because that is the face with which God is present in your life. So I operated on her. It was a terrible operation. I still remember how many hours it took. Then I waited a few days. I did not know. After 3 or 4 days, I knew that things were going well, so I called Giussani again. Giussani, things are going unexpectedly well. Silence. Then he asked, excuse me, did you have any doubts? I was full of doubts. How can he ask that? It was a disaster. I lost weight. Then he said, listen, I told you so. It was awesome when he told me. We pray to God in St. Pampuri and you go operate. And at the end, he says, thanks, because you've been an instrument of a miracle. Listen, guys, this is the correct position in life. I could not even be proud for what I had done, because more discouraged than that. It's awesome. Being an instrument of a miracle means that I did nothing. If this is your attitude on life, what is there to be afraid of? What can stop us? And then the last remark on my profession, very short. Just 2 or 3 months ago, when a serious circumstance happened in my hospital, I told him, Giussani, sometimes I have terrible doubts whether what I do and risk comes from my temperament or from a serious obedience to reality. Is there any way to figure it out? Sometimes I think it's just because of my temperament if I take the risks like that. And when things happen, is there a way to figure out whether it's my temperament or an obedience to reality? Yes, it is that offering I told you about, in front of something that is present. It is like a child that is doing something wrong. The father comes and the child understands the mistake he is making, because the presence brings a drama. Someone to whom you answer for what you do brings a drama to life, in which things become more authentically present. If you go to work like that, you can be incredibly tired. You can be in the wrong mood. But you remain standing, and you respond accordingly. And finally, the last remark. Why are you afraid of your temperament? Listen, this was a liberation. Why are you afraid of your temperament? If God made you like that, you serve as you are. Why do you have to be afraid of your temperament? It was another liberation, because I always think I am, as actually I am, instinctive and violent. But this is, briefly, 2 minutes. What I just shared was the story of my profession. The other unforgettable point of my life is what I understood about what loving means. I'll speak quickly because I wasted time earlier. We were driving together. I was taking him from Cesana to Bologna, and we were talking as usual. I used to drive Giussani often. We were talking, and he asked, "How is your family?" It was a time in my life when I often used to hear the remarks around me, "But what kind of life is he living? But his family, his wife, must be a slave." You know, the things that I heard. But his children? What kind of life is that? And I never cared about that because I'm not interested in what these people say. I know what I feel is true and what I cannot back out of. But after a while, these things start to influence your mind, and I started asking myself, but what kind of life is this? So I said, "Giussani, I have some doubt. What do I do? Do I really love them or not?" He said, "Listen, but do you love your family?" I said, "Yes." "Do you love your children?" I said, "Yes." "Give me an example." I don't know who could even give an example about this. Then I did not know what to say. "Listen, I don't know." I said what used to happen. It often happens that I would arrive home late for my job or for the movement, and my wife, we used to live in a small house, now it's bigger, but empty because the children all left. My wife used to leave the doors open in order to hear if the children were complaining or were waking up, anything. A child falls off the bed. I used to arrive home, and I knew I had to turn on just the entrance light, because if I had turned on the others, I would have awoken them, and I would have been in trouble. And concerning these things, my wife was, she still is actually, by the way, I used to turn on the entrance light, and I used to walk, little by little, undressing in the corridor, and from the door I could see where my children were sleeping. It's difficult to describe, but it gave me an affection for them. You should have seen those tangles on the bed. Then I stealthily went inside. I held one, and sometimes they woke up. "Dad! Shh! Your mom!" Otherwise, I clung to them. I kissed them, those things that you do. And I said, "I think I love them." Giussani said, "You don't love someone in such a way." Listen, the true way to love is that exactly when this affection is intense, true, and enthralling, humanly enthralling, you should step back, look at them, and say, what will happen to them? Because to love is to understand that they have a destiny, that they are not yours. They are yours and they are not yours, that they have a destiny, that precisely looking at the drama that the destiny imposes in your relationship, in the circumstances, in the future, and in the present, you will respect and love them, and you will be ready to do everything for them, and they will not blackmail you by not obeying you. It was a new thing that I understand is always true. Think about the love between man and woman. If there is not this judgment, we are like dogs, the same. What's the difference? And it's incredible because that thing always illuminated me. I remember a meeting in Chieti with Giussani when he introduced for the first time, strongly and publicly, the topic of the you, that you for which the other is a you. And this mystery that makes him is a you, and it is something you look at, and a sudden respect is born. A sudden familiarity and respect, unknown before, never so intense. So, I'll add one detail. The children grew. Holy cow. Sorry, and they're all gone. Holy cow. One is in China, the worst place in the world. I apologize with the Chinese who are here, but even they know that. By the way, it's true. Going to China is like going back 2,000 years. I never understood why my colleagues have such a love for the East. It's terrible. Another child who, in my opinion, should have studied medicine is studying communication science in Lugano, among the Swiss I described before. It's the end. Sometimes we manage to meet all together, but it's rare. So one day I met them for lunch. And I had this thought for a while, and I asked them, "But why are you part of the movement? I never talked to you about the movement. Why are you in the movement?" It's weird. I never talked to them about it. It's true. We never started a discussion about the movement in my family. I lived like that. I lived according to what was attracting me, with my wife and with everything. And so after a while, my older daughter answered, "You know why we are in the movement? First, because we were always struck by the totality of your commitment to the movement. It's so strange. It was exactly the reason why I was less present. It's unbelievable. Think about it. The reason why I was less present was the thing that struck them the most. It's then that I understood that it's useless to try to do everything. The gusto of life, the beauty of life is proportional to the commitment to the ideal. Come on, what do you want to calculate? Even more when you are 20 years old. And the problem becomes interesting. And then the other thing that always struck us was when you used to have your friends over. We were watching you all. It was the kind of friendship we always desired also for ourselves. Guys, this is the point. The authority of our life is a friendship. It's an attractive friendship, and it's a friendship that is impossible without what we talked about today. And it's a kind of friendship that you can see through a modality of relation, of dedication, of totality, of intensity, of mutual service. But where can you find it? But where is it possible? Indeed, Christ is present in a friendship where he is the only reason. And this is what convinces everybody. I was convinced by that. So I understand that here we bet everything. At this level, we bet everything. Therefore, excuse me, I conclude. Two things are important in my life. This is the first. Exactly because of what I told you. The gusto of life is not denied to you if you make mistakes, but if you have no sense of the infinite, of destiny, of the ideal, or of the present mystery. Therefore, the problem is not about making or not making mistakes. The gusto of life is not denied to you if you make mistakes. It is denied if you have no connection with destiny, with the mystery who makes everything, with the present. Therefore, everything is a positive hypothesis. The time that for everybody is synonymous with decay works in a positive way. Listen, if I look at my life, holy cow, what kind of things happened? So much so that I always say, if this is how it's been till now, I can't wait to see what will happen in the future. We will see something. It's interesting, isn't it? It's an adventure. And the point is exactly this, because the second thing is this. If I had to compare my life as it developed, there's a physical law that says that the horizon changes, changing the observation point. The metaphor of my life is like a hot air balloon. The more I go, the more I rise, the more I commit, the more I am inside this life, the more I discover aspects of my humanity that were impossible before. The capacity of fidelity, of friendship, of loyalty, of restarting, of indomitability that I had never imagined before. So it's like this. In the end, it's gratitude. As I said at the beginning, I want to finish exactly like that. It's gratitude that characterizes my life. Therefore, I'm not afraid of giving my whole life.